Think you can erase me, darlings? Kiara Robinson's voice dripped with venom, her words slicing through the glittering air of the peninsula's Grand Hall in Manhattan. Daniel Morgan, smugly parading his mistress Chloe Bennett as my woman, reveled in the crowd's gaze, oblivious to the whispers about his talented black wife, Kiara. Then, like a storm breaking, Kiara stormed in, her red dress blazing, eyes sharp as steel. The room froze. Silently, she flung a glass of icy water into Daniel's face, soaking his pristine suit, then doused Chloe, leaving her sequined gown streaked, mascara running. I'm Kiara Robinson. You don't get to mock me, she declared, her voice a thunderclap. Applause erupted as she strode out, leaving scandal in her wake. What reckoning awaits the betrayers? The Manhattan skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Kiara Robinson's law office, a sleek fortress of glass and steel in Midtown. The city's pulse thrummed below, but inside Kiara sat motionless, her gaze fixed on a framed photo atop her desk, a snapshot of her and Daniel Morgan at a Harlem street festival, their smiles frozen in a moment when love felt unbreakable. At 35, Kiara, a black woman forged in the fires of Harlem's grit, had clawed her way to become a renowned civil rights attorney. Her cornrows, neatly braided, framed a face that radiated both grace and steel, but today her dark eyes held a storm. She leaned back in her leather chair, fingers tracing the edge of a legal brief she'd spent weeks perfecting. Her reputation for defending the marginalized preceded her, earning her respect in courtrooms and fear from opponents. Yet the weight in her chest had nothing to do with case files. It was Daniel, her husband of 8 years, whose late nights and evasive glances had grown too frequent to ignore. The man who once cheered her victories now seemed to chase a different kind of spotlight, one that dimmed her own. Her phone buzzed, shattering the silence. A message from Maya Jackson, her best friend and a razor-sharp investigative journalist, lit up the screen. Check this out. He's at it again. Attached was a screenshot from Instagram, a photo of Daniel, his arms slung around Chloe Bennett, a young influencer with a cascade of blonde hair and a smile too polished to be genuine. The caption read, "Ready to light up the peninsula tonight." Power moves. Kiara's breath caught, not from shock, but from the audacity. The peninsula, the gala for a new investment fund, where Daniel's real estate firm played a starring role. He was taking Chloe there, flaunting her before Manhattan's elite, as if Kiara were a shadow to be erased. She set the phone down, her hands steady despite the fire igniting within. Harlem had taught her resilience. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, singing Billie Holiday's "God Bless the Child" through lean nights in their cramped apartment. "Don't let nobody dim your light, baby girl," Mama had said, her words a shield against a world that often tried. Kiara had carried that mantra through law school, through court battles, through the subtle slights of a society that questioned her place in rooms like the Peninsula's. But Daniel, he was supposed to be her partner, not another adversary. She rose, pacing to the window. Below, cabs honked and pedestrians wove through the chaos of Midtown. Kiara's reflection stared back, tall, poised, her tailored blazer a testament to her success. Yet the ache in her chest wasn't just betrayal. It was the sting of being underestimated. Daniel thought she'd stay home, buried in work, too serious for his glittering world. Chloe, with her curated Instagram feed and hollow ambition, thought she could claim what Kiara had built. They were wrong. Her phone buzzed again. Maya. He's calling her his +1 tonight. You okay? Kiara's lips curved into a wry smile. Okay? No. But broken? Never. She typed back, I'm not okay. I'm coming. Maya's response was instant. That's my girl. Show them who you are. Kiara's fingers lingered over the screen, her mind racing. She could confront Daniel privately, demand answers in their Upper West Side penthouse. But that would be his game. Quiet, controlled, where he could spin lies. No, the peninsula was his stage, and she'd steal the spotlight. She crossed to her office closet, where a garment bag hung, untouched since she'd picked it up from a Harlem seamstress. Inside was a dress, black silk, embroidered with intricate African-inspired patterns, a nod to her roots and a declaration of her power. She unzipped the bag, running her fingers over the fabric. Miss Clara, the seamstress, had grinned when she finished it. "This ain't just a dress, Kiara. It's armor." Tonight, it would be exactly that. Kiara's thoughts drifted to her early days with Daniel. He'd been different then, a scrappy entrepreneur who admired her fire, who danced with her under Harlem streetlights to jazz spilling from corner bars. But success had changed him. The more he climbed, the more he craved the shallow adoration of Manhattan's elite. Chloe was his latest trophy, a glittering distraction from the depth he couldn't handle. Kiara's jaw tightened. She wasn't just his wife. She was Kiara Robinson, the woman who'd faced down judges and won, who'd carried her community's hopes on her shoulders. She wouldn't let them reduce her to a footnote. She grabbed her phone and called Maya. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice low, steady. Maya didn't hold back. "Chloe's been posting all day. Pictures with Daniel. That necklace he swore he bought for you. They're acting like you don't exist. The Gala's crawling with his investors, and he's parading her like a prize." Kiara's grip tightened, but her voice remained calm. "Good. Let them perform. I'll be there to close the curtain." Hanging up, she slipped into the dress, the silk cool against her skin. She fastened a pair of gold hoop earrings, her mother's passed down with a whisper of, "Carry us with you." In the mirror, she saw not just a lawyer or a wife, but a warrior. Harlem's rhythm pulsed in her veins, the beat of survival and pride. She picked up a glass from her desk, filled it with water from a pitcher, and stared at it. Not wine, not champagne. Water, clear and unyielding, like her resolve. Tonight she'd walk into that gala, not as Daniel's shadow, but as Kiara Robinson, unstoppable. She stepped into the elevator, the city's hum fading as the doors closed. Her reflection in the polished steel was fierce, unapologetic. Daniel and Chloe thought they could rewrite her story, but they'd forgotten who held the pen. The peninsula awaited, a battleground of chandeliers and egos. Kiara's heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. She'd spent years fighting for others. Tonight, she'd fight for herself. As the elevator descended, she whispered, "They're about to learn who I am." The doors opened to the lobby, and Kiara stepped out, her heels clicking against marble. Outside, Manhattan's lights beckoned, a city of dreams and betrayals. She hailed a cab, the glass of water still in hand, its weight a promise. The gala would be more than a party, it would be her reckoning. Daniel Morgan leaned against the sleek marble counter of his Tribeca penthouse, a glass of bourbon in hand, its amber glow catching the city lights streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The Manhattan skyline sprawled before him, a glittering testament to his success, but his pulse raced with something sharper than pride: anticipation. At 38, Daniel had built a real estate empire, his name synonymous with power in boardrooms and bars alike. Yet tonight, as he adjusted his tailored tuxedo in the mirror, it wasn't deals or dollars that set his heart pounding. It was the thrill of stepping into the Peninsula Gala with Chloe Bennett on his arm, a calculated move to cement his image as untouchable. Kiara, his wife, was a distant thought, her quiet strength no match for the dazzle he craved. Chloe stood before a full-length mirror, her reflection a vision of curated perfection. The sequined, backless gown hugged her frame, its silver sheen amplifying her golden hair. At 27, she was an influencer with 1 million followers, each post a carefully crafted illusion of glamour. But beneath the flawless makeup, a flicker of unease stirred. She fastened the diamond necklace Daniel had given her, a piece he'd once promised to someone else, though he'd waved off her questions with a laugh. "It's just jewelry, Chloe. It's yours now." She wanted to believe it, wanted to believe she was more than a fleeting distraction. Tonight's gala was her chance to prove it, to step out of Instagram's confines and into Manhattan's elite. Daniel's eyes lingered on her, a smirk playing on his lips. "You're going to steal the show tonight," he said, his voice smooth as the bourbon. Chloe turned, her smile practiced but electric. "We're going to steal it," she corrected, stepping closer, her fingers brushing his lapel. "You and me, the power couple they won't forget." Her heart fluttered with ambition, but a shadow of doubt crept in. She'd seen the whispers online, the mentions of Kiara Robinson, the brilliant black attorney whose name carried weight Daniel couldn't match. Chloe pushed the thought away. Kiara was too busy saving the world to care about a gala, wasn't she? Daniel's chest swelled with confidence, but a nagging unease gnawed at him. He remembered Kiara's eyes, dark, piercing, seeing through his lies even when she said nothing. They'd met a decade ago, when he was just a hustler with big dreams, and she was a law student with fire in her soul. Back then, her strength had drawn him in, her Harlem roots grounding his ambition. But now her quiet dignity felt like a chain, holding him back from the spotlight he deserved. Chloe was different, vibrant, pliable, a mirror for his ego. Yet as he sipped his drink, a memory flashed. Kiara dancing with him under Harlem's streetlights, her laughter echoing to a jazz trumpet's wail. He shook it off, draining the glass. "You sure she won't show up?" Chloe asked, her voice casual but edged with nerves. She adjusted her gown, avoiding his gaze. Daniel laughed, too loud, too quick. "Kiara? She's probably buried in case files. Galas aren't her thing." His words were firm, but his fingers tightened around the empty glass. He'd told himself the same lie for weeks, ignoring the late-night calls he'd dodged. The way Kiara's silence had grown heavier. She wouldn't come. She couldn't. Yet a flicker of fear danced in his gut. What if she did? Chloe caught the hesitation in his eyes and her stomach twisted. She'd built her brand on confidence, on posing for cameras and charming strangers. But Daniel's world was different. These weren't followers. They were sharks, investors, moguls, people who could make or break her. She needed this night to work, needed Daniel to keep his promises of introductions, of elevating her status. "We're unstoppable tonight," she said, more to herself than him, her voice a mix of bravado and desperation. She posted another Instagram story, her and Daniel, clinking glasses, captioned, "Ready to rule the night." The likes poured in, but each one felt hollow, a reminder of the stakes. The penthouse doorbell chimed, and Tom, Daniel's old friend and business associate, stepped in. His easy grin faded as he saw Chloe. "You sure about this, man?" he asked, his tone low, cautious. "Parading her around when Kiara's your wife? People talk, Daniel." Daniel waved him off, his laugh brittle. "Let them talk. Kiara's too busy playing hero. Tonight's about me. Us." Tom's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, his silence louder than words. Chloe felt a chill, her smile faltering. Tom knew Kiara and had seen her command courtrooms, her presence undeniable. What if he was right? Daniel clapped Tom's shoulder, steering him toward the door. "Come on, let's get to the peninsula. We've got a show to put on." His voice was all charm, but his heart raced with a mix of exhilaration and dread. He wanted the gala's eyes on him, wanted the whispers to be about his power, not his betrayal. Chloe followed, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her mind spinning. She imagined the cameras, the envy, the doors that would open. But beneath it all, a voice whispered, "What if Kiara shows up? What if she's not what you think?" They stepped into the elevator, the city's glow enveloping them. Daniel's hand rested on Chloe's waist, but his thoughts flickered to Kiara, her quiet strength, her unyielding gaze. He pushed it down, focusing on the night ahead. Chloe stared at her reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls, her smile a mask. She wasn't just here for Daniel. She was here for herself, for the life she'd dreamed of since her small-town days. But as the doors opened to the lobby, a strange certainty settled over her. Tonight would not go as planned. The limo waited outside, its sleek black frame a promise of grandeur. Daniel and Chloe slid inside, the city blurring past as they headed to the peninsula. Daniel's smirk hid his unease. Chloe's poise masked her fear. They were players in a game they thought they controlled, blind to the storm brewing in Harlem's daughter. The gala loomed, a stage set for their triumph, or their downfall. The peninsula's grand ballroom shimmered with opulence, its chandeliers casting prisms of light across silk-draped tables and polished floors. The air buzzed with the clink of champagne flutes, the murmur of Manhattan's elite, and the soft strains of a jazz quartet, a nod to the city's soulful undercurrent. Daniel Morgan stood at the heart of it all, his tailored tuxedo pristine, his smile a practiced mask of confidence. Yet beneath the polish, his heart thumped with a restless hunger for admiration, for control, for the thrill of being seen. Chloe Bennett clung to his arm, her sequined gown catching every light, her laughter a calculated melody designed to draw eyes. But as the room pulsed around them, a shadow of doubt flickered in Daniel's chest, a whisper he couldn't quite silence. Chloe's pulse raced, her smile as bright as it was brittle. She felt the weight of every glance, every whispered conversation. These weren't her Instagram followers liking her posts with mindless taps. These were titans of industry, socialites with razor-sharp judgment, and journalists like Maya Jackson, whose eyes glinted with something too knowing. Chloe tilted her chin, letting her diamond necklace, a gift from Daniel, heavy with unspoken history, sparkle under the lights. She wanted to believe she belonged here, that she was more than a prop in Daniel's world. "Introduce me to someone important," she murmured, her voice low, urgent. Daniel's grin widened, but his eyes darted, scanning the room. "Patience, darling," he said, his tone smooth but strained. "You're already the star." He led her to a cluster of investors, men in bespoke suits whose names carried weight in boardrooms. "Gentlemen, meet Chloe Bennett, my inspiration," Daniel said, his hand resting possessively on her waist. The word wife hung unspoken, a ghost in the room. The investors nodded politely, but their smiles were thin, their eyes flicking to the side as if searching for someone else. Chloe's stomach twisted. She'd seen the posts online, the mentions of Kiara Robinson, the black attorney whose name echoed with respect Daniel couldn't command. Was she really absent, as Daniel insisted? Or was she waiting, watching? Daniel's chest tightened, though he hid it behind a laugh. He'd built his empire on charisma, on bending perceptions to his will. But tonight felt different. The room's energy was unsteady, like a stage waiting for its lead actor. He caught sight of Maya across the ballroom, her notebook open, her gaze piercing. She'd always been Kiara's shadow, her fierce protector. Daniel's jaw clenched. Maya knew too much about the late-night texts, the necklace he'd repurposed, the lies he'd spun. He shook off the unease, raising his glass. "To new ventures," he toasted, his voice booming. The investors echoed him, but their enthusiasm felt hollow, their glances straying. Chloe sipped her champagne, her fingers trembling slightly. She'd dreamed of nights like this. Glamour, power, a world where she was more than a small-town girl with a camera. But the whispers around her grew louder, fragments catching her ear. "Where's Kiara? She's the one who won that case against the city, right?" Daniel's playing a dangerous game. Her smile faltered, and she pressed closer to Daniel, seeking reassurance in his warmth. But his eyes were elsewhere, scanning the crowd, as if he too sensed a storm brewing. "They love us," she whispered, more to convince herself than him. Daniel nodded absently, his thoughts drifting to Kiara, her quiet strength, the way she'd once looked at him like he was enough. A woman approached, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, her presence commanding. Evelyn Carter, a real estate mogul who'd worked with Kiara on community projects, fixed Daniel with a cool stare. "Bold move, Morgan," she said, her voice laced with irony. "Parading your new friend when Kiara's name is on everyone's lips." Daniel's laugh was too quick, too sharp. "Kiara's swamped with work, Evelyn. You know how she is." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her silence cutting deeper than words. Chloe's cheeks burned, the weight of the necklace suddenly suffocating. She wanted to snap back, to claim her place, but Evelyn's gaze made her feel small, exposed. Across the room, Maya scribbled furiously, her heart racing with anticipation. She'd sent Kiara a final text. "They're peacocking like fools. Hurry." She'd known Kiara since their Harlem childhood, when they'd shared dreams over stoop steps, Nina Simone's voice drifting from open windows. Kiara wasn't just her friend. She was a force, a woman who'd faced down injustice and won. Maya's lips curved into a knowing smile. Daniel and Chloe thought they owned this night, but they were about to meet their match. Daniel pulled Chloe onto the dance floor, desperate to reclaim the room's attention. The quartet played a sultry tune, and Chloe moved with practiced grace, her gown shimmering, but her heart pounded with a mix of exhilaration and fear. Every spin felt like a performance, every smile a plea for acceptance. She caught a glimpse of herself in a mirrored wall, radiant, flawless, yet fragile. What if Kiara walked through those doors? What if the whispers were true? Daniel's hand tightened on hers, but his eyes were distant, haunted by a truth he wouldn't face. He wanted this moment to define him, but deep down he knew it might destroy him. The music swelled, the crowd's murmurs rising with it. A waiter passed offering drinks and Daniel grabbed a glass, downing it to steady his nerves. Chloe forced a laugh, tossing her hair, but her eyes darted to the entrance. The doors remained closed, but the air felt charged, heavy with expectation. Someone in the crowd whispered, "She wouldn't miss this, would she?" Daniel's smile froze. Chloe's heart skipped. The gala was their stage, but it was tilting, ready to collapse under the weight of their choices. Kiara Robinson stood in the dim glow of a Harlem seamstress shop, the air thick with the scent of aged fabric and the hum of a jazz record spinning softly in the corner. The shop, tucked between a bodega and a muraled brownstone, was a sanctuary of memory, its walls lined with bolts of cloth that whispered stories of resilience. Kiara's fingers traced the black silk dress hanging before her, its African-inspired embroidery glinting like stars against a midnight sky. At 35, she carried the weight of Harlem's pride in her bones, her cornrows a crown of heritage, her dark eyes a storm of resolve and pain. Tonight, she wasn't just a civil rights attorney. She was a woman reclaiming her light, and this dress was her armor. The mirror reflected a warrior, but inside, Kiara's heart churned. Daniel's betrayal, his arm around Chloe Bennett, his brazen Instagram posts, cut deeper than she'd admitted to Maya. She'd loved him once, fiercely, when he was a dreamer who saw her as his equal, not a shadow to his ambition. Those nights in Harlem, swaying to jazz under streetlights, felt like another life. Now he paraded Chloe before Manhattan's elite, dismissing Kiara as if she were nothing. The sting wasn't just the affair, it was the audacity, the assumption she'd stay silent, buried in her work. Her chest tightened, but she exhaled, steadying herself. Harlem had taught her to stand tall, to fight when the world tried to shrink her. Miss Clara, the seamstress, emerged from the back, her silver braids gleaming under the shop's soft lights. "You wear this like a queen, Kiara," she said, her voice warm with pride. "Your mama would have said the same." Kiara's lips curved, a flicker of warmth breaking through her storm. Mama's voice echoed in her mind. "Ain't nobody got the right to dim you, baby girl." Sung to the tune of Aretha Franklin's Respect during lean nights in their tiny apartment. That strength had carried Kiara through law school, through courtrooms where she faced down prejudice, through a marriage that now crumbled under Daniel's ego. She wouldn't let him steal her fire. Her phone buzzed. Maya, relentless as ever. "They're at it, Kiara. Chloe's practically glued to him, and he's eating up the attention. You coming?" Kiara's grip tightened, her resolve hardening. "I'm on my way," she replied, her voice low and wavering. "Tell me he's still wearing that smug grin." Maya's laugh crackled through the speaker. "Oh, it's smug all right, but not for long." Kiara hung up, her pulse quickening. She could confront Daniel at home, demand answers in private, but that would be his game, safe, controlled. The peninsula was his stage, and she'd turn it into hers. She slipped into the dress, the silk cool against her skin, its embroidered patterns a reminder of her roots. Patterns that spoke of ancestors who endured, who thrived. Miss Clara fastened a clasp at the neck, her eyes soft but fierce. "Go show them who you are, child. Not just for you, but for all of us." Kiara nodded, her throat tight. This wasn't just about her marriage. It was about every time she'd been underestimated, every glance that questioned her place in Manhattan's elite. She'd fought for others. Now she'd fight for herself. Kiara reached for her mother's gold hoop earrings, their weight grounding her. She picked up a glass from the shop's counter, filling it with water from a pitcher Miss Clara kept nearby. Not wine, not champagne. Water, clear and unyielding, like her intent. She stared at it, the liquid catching the light. It wasn't just a drink. It was a weapon, a symbol of her clarity. Daniel and Chloe thought they could erase her, but they'd learn the cost of their arrogance. She stepped outside, the Harlem night alive with sound, a saxophone's wail, laughter from a nearby stoop, the pulse of a community that had raised her. The cab waited, its engine humming like her own heartbeat. She slid inside, the glass still in hand, its cold surface steadying her. "Peninsula Hotel," she told the driver, her voice calm but edged with fire. As the cab wove through Manhattan's glittering streets, Kiara's thoughts churned. She saw Daniel's face, his easy charm now a mask for betrayal. She saw Chloe, her calculated smiles, her stolen necklace. The pain was there, sharp and raw, but it fueled her, not weakened her. Her phone lit up again, Maya's text. "They're dancing now, acting like they own the place. Hurry." Kiara's lips pressed into a thin line. She imagined Daniel's hand on Chloe's waist, the crowd's eyes on them, the whispers about her absence. Let them bask in their moment, it would be their last. She closed her eyes, picturing her mother's face, her voice singing through Harlem's nights. "You're stronger than their lies," Mom had said. Kiara opened her eyes, the city's lights blurring past. She was stronger, and she'd prove it. The cab slowed, the peninsula's grand facade looming ahead, its marble steps a gateway to battle. Kiara's heart pounded, not with fear but with purpose. She stepped out, the night air cool against her skin, the dress shimmering like a promise. The glass of water felt heavy, its purpose clear. She wasn't here to beg or plead. She was here to reclaim her name, her pride, her light. The doorman nodded, sensing her resolve, and opened the door. Kiara took a deep breath, her heels clicking against the marble lobby. The ballroom lay just beyond, a world of chandeliers and egos waiting for her entrance. She paused at the threshold, her reflection in a gilded mirror catching her eye. She saw not just a woman scorned, but a queen forged in Harlem's fire, ready to face her betrayers. The jazz from the ballroom drifted out, a faint echo of home. Kiara straightened, her eyes blazing. "Let's see how they handle me," she whispered, stepping forward, the glass steady in her hand. Kiara Robinson stood at the threshold of the peninsula's grand ballroom, the weight of her black silk dress anchoring her like a warrior's mantle, its African-inspired embroidery a quiet hymn to her Harlem roots. The glass of water in her hand felt cold, heavy with purpose, its surface catching the chandelier's prismed light. Her heart thundered, a mix of rage and resolve, but her face was a mask of unyielding calm. Beyond the gilded doors, the jazz quartet's melody mingled with the clatter of Manhattan's elite, unaware of the storm about to break. Kiara's dark eyes, sharp as obsidian, burned with the fire of a woman betrayed. Not just by Daniel Morgan, her husband, but by the audacity of his public dismissal. She wasn't here to plead, she was here to reclaim her name. The doors swung open and Kiara stepped forward, her heels striking the marble floor like a drumbeat of defiance. The ballroom fell silent, as if the air itself held its breath. Chandeliers cast a golden glow, but all eyes locked onto her, her dress shimmering, her cornrows a crown, her presence a force that stilled the room. Daniel stood at the center, his arm around Chloe Bennett, his tuxedo pristine, his smile smug. Chloe, in her sequined gown, laughed too loudly, her diamond necklace, a stolen promise, glinting like a taunt. But when they saw Kiara, their world tilted. Daniel's grin froze, his hand dropping from Chloe's waist. Chloe's laughter choked, her eyes widening with a flicker of fear she couldn't hide. Kiara's heart pounded, not with doubt but with clarity. Every whisper she'd ignored, every late-night call Daniel brushed off, every Instagram post flaunting Chloe's stolen place, fueled her now. She thought of her mother, singing "Ain't No Mountain High Enough" through Harlem's lean nights, teaching her to stand tall. This wasn't just about a marriage. It was about every time she'd been underestimated, every sidelong glance that questioned her worth in rooms like this. Her grip tightened on the glass, the water rippling slightly. She moved forward, each step deliberate, her eyes locked on Daniel, then Chloe, their arrogance crumbling under her gaze. The crowd parted, a sea of silken tuxedos yielding to her presence. Maya Jackson, stationed near the bar, clutched her notebook, her heart racing with pride. She'd seen Kiara fight in courtrooms, but this was different. This was personal, raw, a reclaiming of her light. Across the room, Evelyn Carter, the silver-haired mogul, raised an eyebrow, her lips curving in quiet approval. The jazz quartet faltered, the saxophonist pausing mid-note, sensing the shift. Daniel's throat bobbed, his voice caught. Kiara, he managed, but the word was weak, a plea swallowed by the silence. Chloe clutched his arm, her smile a desperate mask, her pulse hammering with the realization that she was no match for the woman before her. Kiara stopped a few feet away, her gaze cutting through them like a blade. The pain of Daniel's betrayal pulsed in her chest, but it was dwarfed by her fury, not wild but focused, a fire honed by years of fighting for justice. She saw Chloe's necklace, the one Daniel had promised her during a quiet moment in their early days, and the sting sharpened her resolve. "Think you can erase me, darlings?" she said, her voice low, laced with venom that made Daniel flinch and Chloe's face pale. The words hung in the air, a challenge that echoed Harlem's unyielding spirit. Without breaking eye contact, Kiara raised the glass. The room held its breath, the silence so profound it felt like a heartbeat. With a swift, deliberate motion, she flung the water into Daniel's face. It splashed across his tuxedo, soaking the crisp white shirt, dripping onto the polished floor. His eyes widened, shock and shame warring in his expression. Before he could speak, Kiara turned to Chloe and hurled the remaining water, the icy liquid streaking her sequined gown, leaving dark patches and mascara trails down her cheeks. Chloe gasped, her hands flying to her face, her poise shattered. "I'm Kiara Robinson," Kiara said, her voice rising, clear and commanding, filling the ballroom. "You don't get to mock me, not tonight, not ever." The words were a thunderclap, each syllable a declaration of her worth, her strength, her refusal to be diminished. The crowd erupted, some in gasps, others in applause, the sound swelling like a tide. Evelyn clapped slowly, her eyes gleaming with respect. Maya scribbled furiously, her heart soaring. Daniel stood frozen, water dripping from his chin, his ego empire crumbling. Chloe, humiliated, tried to wipe her face, but the mascara stains marked her like a confession. Kiara's chest heaved, but her face remained composed, regal. The pain was still there, raw and jagged, but it was overshadowed by triumph. She'd fought for others her whole life. Now she'd fought for herself, and the victory was hers alone. She turned, her dress catching the light, and walked toward the doors. Daniel's voice broke the silence, desperate. "Kiara, wait, please!" But she didn't falter, didn't look back. Her heels echoed, a steady rhythm of defiance, as the crowd watched, some whispering her name in awe. Maya caught her eye, giving a fierce nod, her camera already capturing the moment for the world. Kiara felt the weight of Harlem in her stride, her mother's songs, her community's pride, her own unbreakable spirit. She'd come not to beg, but to burn away the lies. As she reached the doors, a woman in the crowd murmured, "That's a queen right there." Kiara's lips curved, a faint smile of resolve. She'd reclaimed her light, and no one could dim it now. The Peninsula ballroom buzzed with a new electricity, the echoes of Kiara Robinson's departure lingering like a storm's aftershock. The chandeliers still gleamed, but their light now exposed the cracks in the facade of the Gala's glittering crowd. Kiara's words, "You don't get to mock me," hung in the air, a verdict delivered with the force of Harlem's unyielding spirit. The jazz quartet resumed, its notes tentative, as if unsure whether to soothe or stoke the chaos. Daniel Morgan stood frozen, water dripping from his soaked tuxedo, each drop a mocking reminder of his fall. His face burned with shame, his heart a tangle of shock and regret. Chloe Bennett, her sequined gown marred with wet streaks, clutched her face, mascara trails betraying her unraveling poise. The crowd's whispers swelled, a tide of judgment that threatened to drown them both. Daniel's chest heaved, his breath shallow as he felt the weight of every stare. Moments ago, he'd been the king of this room, his arm around Chloe, his laughter drowning out the doubts. Now he was a spectacle, a man stripped bare by his own arrogance. Kiara's face flashed in his mind, her eyes fierce and unyielding, cutting through the lies he'd told himself. He'd convinced himself she wouldn't care, that her world of courtrooms and causes was too lofty for this glittering stage. But she'd come, not as a scorned wife, but as a force, and he'd underestimated her at his peril. "Kiara," he muttered, his voice lost in the murmurs, a futile plea to a woman who'd already reclaimed her power. Chloe's hands trembled as she wiped at her face, the mascara smearing further, her carefully crafted image crumbling. The crowd's eyes, those of investors, socialites, and journalists, pierced her like needles. She dreamed of this night, of being the star on Daniel's arm, of stepping into a world where her Instagram followers translated to real power. But now she was a punchline, her gown a sodden ruin, her necklace a stolen trophy that weighed like guilt. She glanced at Daniel, desperate for him to fix this, to flash his charm and make it right. But his eyes were hollow, fixed on the doors where Kiara had vanished. "Say something," Chloe hissed, her voice cracking with panic. "Do something." Daniel didn't move, his silence a betrayal of its own. Maya Jackson stood near the bar, her notebook open, her heart pounding with a mix of pride and fury. She'd watched Kiara transform the room, turning Daniel and Chloe's charade into a public reckoning. Maya had grown up with Kiara in Harlem, sharing dreams on stoops while gospel hymns drifted from open windows. She knew the strength it took for Kiara to walk in here, to face betrayal with such fire. Now she scribbled notes, her pen racing to capture every detail. The crowd's gasps, Chloe's humiliated flush, Daniel's drenched defeat. "This is going viral," she muttered, her lips curving. She caught the eye of Evelyn Carter, the real estate mogul, who gave a slow nod as if to say, "She did it." Maya's camera clicked, sealing the moment for the world. Evelyn approached Daniel, her silver hair gleaming, her expression a mix of pity and disdain. "You played a fool's game, Morgan," she said, her voice low but cutting. "Kiara's worth 10 of you, and you threw her away for this?" She glanced at Chloe, who flinched, her cheeks burning. Evelyn's words stung Daniel deeper than the water, each one a mirror to his mistakes. He'd wanted to be seen, to be the man who had it all: wealth, power, a beautiful woman on his arm. But Kiara's presence had exposed the truth. He was nothing without her. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. The crowd's whispers grew louder. "She's a queen. He didn't deserve her." Each one a nail in the coffin of his pride. Chloe's heart raced, her mind spiraling. She'd built her life on appearances, on likes and comments. But this room wasn't her curated feed. These people didn't forgive. They judged. She saw a journalist snap a photo, her ruined makeup immortalized. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Notifications, no doubt, already spreading the scandal. She wanted to run, to hide, but her legs felt leaden. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered, her voice trembling. She thought Daniel's world was hers for the taking, that Kiara was just a name to be forgotten. But Kiara's fire had burned through her illusions, leaving her exposed, vulnerable, and alone. Daniel's eyes darted to the crowd, seeking an ally, a lifeline. He saw Tom, his friend from the penthouse, and standing at the edge, his face grim. "I told you, man," Tom said, stepping closer. "You pushed too far." Daniel's throat tightened, the weight of his choices crushing him. He remembered Kiara's laugh, her strength, the way she'd anchored him before he chased this hollow glory. Now he was a pariah, his investors turning away, their murmurs a chorus of condemnation. He wanted to chase Kiara, to beg, but her final words echoed. "You don't get to mock me." He'd lost her, and with her, himself. Maya slipped through the crowd, her heart swelling with admiration for her friend. She'd seen Kiara fight for others, but this was different. This was Kiara fighting for her soul. The jazz quartet played on, its melody now a defiant anthem, reminiscent of Harlem's unbreakable spirit. Maya typed a quick text. "You were epic. The world's about to know." She knew Kiara was already outside, breathing free, but this moment belonged to her, etched in the stunned faces around the room. The crowd began to move again, some raising glasses to Kiara's name, others whispering about the fallout. Daniel stood rooted, water pooling at his feet, his ego in ruins. Chloe, her hands shaking, slipped toward the exit, her dreams of grandeur shattered. The ballroom's glamour felt hollow now, a stage where Kiara had stolen the spotlight, leaving only wreckage in her wake. The peninsula's marble hallway stretched before Kiara Robinson like a path to freedom. Its cool air a sharp contrast to the ballroom's stifling heat. Her black silk dress, embroidered with the strength of her Harlem ancestors, rustled softly, each step echoing with purpose. The glass she'd wielded was gone, its water now a stain on Daniel Morgan's pride and Chloe Bennett's facade. But Kiara's heart still thrummed with the aftershocks of her stand. Triumph surged through her, yet beneath it, pain lingered. A raw ache from a marriage betrayed, from a love she'd once believed eternal. Her cornrows gleamed under the hallway's soft lights, a crown of resilience, but her dark eyes held a storm of emotions. Fury, sorrow, and an unyielding resolve to never again be diminished. Daniel burst through the ballroom doors, his tuxedo still damp, water clinging to his face like tears he couldn't shed. His breath came in ragged gasps, his heart a chaotic drumbeat of panic and regret. The crowd's whispers, queen, fool, Kiara, followed him, each word a lash against his pride. He'd built his world on charm and ambition, but Kiara's fire had exposed it as a house of cards. Her words, "You don't get to mock me," echoed in his skull, a verdict he couldn't escape. He saw her ahead, her silhouette commanding, even in retreat, and desperation clawed at him. "Kiara!" he called, his voice hoarse, breaking. "Please, wait!" Kiara paused, her back straight, but she didn't turn. The sound of his voice, once a comfort, now a betrayal, stirred a pang in her chest. She remembered their early days when Daniel's laughter had warmed her, when he'd stood by her side in Harlem's crowded streets, promising forever. But those promises had crumbled under his hunger for a shinier world, one where Chloe's shallow dazzle outshone Kiara's steady fire. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto his, sharp and unyielding. "What do you want, Daniel?" she asked, her voice low, each word a blade honed by pain. Daniel's throat tightened, his hands trembling as he stepped closer. "I messed up, Kiara," he said, his voice cracking. "Chloe, she's nothing. A mistake. You're my wife. My—" He faltered, seeing the steel in her gaze. Shame flooded him, not just for the gala, but for every lie, every sidelong glance he'd given Chloe, every moment he'd let Kiara's light fade in his eyes. He'd thought he could have it all, power, admiration, a new muse, without losing her. Now standing in the wreckage of his choices, he saw the truth. Kiara was the only thing that made him whole. "You think an apology fixes this?" Kiara's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of Harlem's unbowed spirit, of her mother's gospel hymns sung through hard nights. "You didn't just betray me, Daniel. You tried to erase me, to parade her in front of the world like I was nothing." Her words cut, not with anger, but with clarity, each one stripping away his defenses. She stepped closer, her presence towering. "I'm Kiara Robinson. I fought for my place in this world, and I don't need you to validate it." Daniel's eyes burned, his chest hollow. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back, her movement final. "I love you," he whispered, the words desperate, true, but too late. He saw their past nights laughing over jazz in Harlem bars, her hand in his as they dreamed of a future. But he traded it for fleeting applause, for Chloe's hollow shine. The crowd's judgment, Evelyn's disdain, Tom's warning, all paled next to Kiara's rejection. He was losing her, and with her, the man he'd once been. Behind them, the ballroom doors creaked open, and Chloe stumbled into the hallway, her sequined gown still streaked, her face a mess of mascara and humiliation. She'd lingered, hoping to salvage her image, but the whispers had driven her out. Her heart raced with panic, her dreams of grandeur shattered. She'd wanted to be the star, to claim Daniel's world, but Kiara's fire had reduced her to a footnote. "Daniel," she called, her voice trembling, "we need to go." Her eyes darted to Kiara, fear mingling with resentment. She'd underestimated her, thought her too serious, too absent. Now she saw the truth. Kiara was a force she could never match. Kiara's gaze flicked to Chloe, cool and unflinching. "You're not part of this," she said, her tone final, dismissing Chloe as effortlessly as she'd doused her. Chloe's cheeks burned, her hands clenching. She wanted to snap back, to reclaim her dignity, but the weight of the crowd's eyes, still watching from the ballroom, silenced her. She was alone, her Instagram empire meaningless in the face of Kiara's strength. Kiara turned back to Daniel, her voice steady. "We're done, Daniel. Not because I'm broken, but because you're not worth my fight." She stepped away, her heels clicking, each sound a declaration of freedom. Daniel's knees buckled, his hand reaching for nothing. He saw her walk away, her silhouette framed by the hallway's light, and felt the void she left behind, a void he'd created. Chloe grabbed his arm, her nails digging in. "Let's go," she hissed, her voice a mix of fear and anger. But Daniel pulled away, his eyes fixed on Kiara's retreating figure. He was alone now, his empire of ego in ruins, his heart heavy with the truth. He'd lost the only thing that mattered. The hallway felt colder, the distant jazz from the ballroom a mournful echo of the life he'd thrown away. Kiara didn't look back. Her heart ached, but it was lighter, freed from the weight of Daniel's lies. She thought of her mother, of Harlem's streets, of the women who'd raised her to stand tall. This wasn't the end. It was her beginning. She stepped toward the lobby, the night air calling, her soul alight with purpose. Kiara Robinson stepped out of the peninsula's marble embrace into the Manhattan night, the city's pulse wrapping around her like a familiar hymn. Her black silk dress, woven with the strength of her Harlem ancestors, caught the streetlight's glow, a beacon of her reclaimed power. Her heart, still tender from Daniel Morgan's betrayal, beat with a newfound lightness, freedom forged in the fire of her stand. The ache of a broken marriage lingered, but it was eclipsed by a fierce pride, a certainty that she was more than enough. Harlem's spirit pulsed in her veins, her mother's voice echoing through the years. "Ain't nobody got the right to dim you, baby girl." And Kiara felt it now, brighter than ever. She was no longer Daniel's wife. She was Kiara Robinson, a queen unbroken, ready to write her own story. She hailed a cab, the glass doors of the peninsula fading behind her. The driver, a gray-haired man with a Harlem accent, glanced at her through the rear-view mirror. "Rough night, sis?" he asked, his voice warm. Kiara smiled, her eyes glinting. "Not anymore," she said softly. "I'm heading home." Home wasn't just her Upper West Side apartment. It was Harlem, where stoops held stories, where gospel hymns rose from church windows, where she'd been shaped into a woman who didn't bend. The cab wove through the city, and Kiara leaned back, her mother's gold hoop earrings brushing her shoulders, grounding her. She'd faced Daniel and Chloe, doused their arrogance with water and truth, and now she felt free, not just from them, but from the weight of their lies. Back at the peninsula, Daniel stood alone in the hallway, the echo of Kiara's final words, "We're done," ringing in his ears like a death knell. His tuxedo, still damp, clung to him, a symbol of his shattered ego. His heart churned with regret, a raw, gnawing pain he hadn't anticipated. He'd chased the spotlight, traded Kiara's steady love for Chloe's fleeting dazzle, and now he was nothing. A man stripped of respect, his name whispered in scorn. The ballroom's murmurs drifted through the doors. "She's a queen." He threw it all away, each one a blade in his chest. He thought of their early days, of Kiara's laughter under Harlem's streetlights, her hand in his as they dreamed big. He'd been enough for her then. Now he was a shadow unworthy of her light. Daniel sank against the wall, his hands trembling. He saw Evelyn Carter's disdain, Tom's grim warning, and the investor's cold shoulders. His empire, built on charm and deals, was crumbling. He wanted to run after Kiara, to beg for forgiveness. But her words had been final, her strength a wall he couldn't breach. "I lost her," he whispered, his voice breaking. The hallway felt vast, empty, a mirror of the void inside him. He'd wanted to be seen, but now he was seen for what he truly was, a fool who'd traded gold for glitter. Chloe Bennett, meanwhile, had slipped out a side exit, her sequined gown a sodden ruin, her face streaked with mascara and shame. The night air stung her skin, but it was nothing compared to the panic clawing at her heart. She'd come to the gala dreaming of power, of claiming Daniel's world as her own. Instead, Kiara's fire had exposed her as a pretender. The crowd's whispers, She thought she could replace Kiara, followed her like ghosts. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, notifications flooding in, but she didn't dare look. She knew what they'd say. Mockery, scorn, her carefully curated image shattered. She'd wanted to be a star, but now she was a scandal, her ambition reduced to a cautionary tale. Chloe leaned against a street lamp, her breath hitching. She thought of her small-town roots, the years spent chasing a life bigger than herself. Daniel had been her ticket, his promises of connections and glamour a siren song. But Kiara's presence, her unyielding strength, had revealed the truth. Chloe was no match. The necklace around her throat, Daniel's stolen gift, felt like a noose. She tore it off, her hands shaking, and let it fall to the pavement. "I was a fool," she whispered, her voice swallowed by the city's hum. Alone, exposed, she felt the weight of her choices, the cost of reaching for a world that didn't want her. In Harlem, Kiara stepped out of the cab, the familiar rhythm of the neighborhood washing over her. A saxophone wailed from a nearby bar, and laughter spilled from a stoop where kids played under streetlights. She walked toward a community center, its walls adorned with murals of black women, warriors, mothers, dreamers. Maya Jackson waited inside, her eyes bright with pride. "You were a hurricane, girl," Maya said, pulling Kiara into a hug. "The whole city's talking about you." Kiara's laugh was soft, tinged with relief. "I didn't do it for them," she said. "I did it for me." Maya handed her a tablet showing a draft article. "The Queen of the Peninsula, Kiara Robinson's Triumph." "This is just the start," Maya said, her voice fierce. "You're not just a story, you're a movement." Kiara's heart swelled, not with pride, but with purpose. She thought of the women she'd defended in court, the ones who'd lost their voices to betrayal or doubt. She'd stood for them, and now she'd stand for herself, for every woman who needed to reclaim her light. Kiara stepped to the center's window, looking out at Harlem's vibrant streets. A gospel choir rehearsed nearby, their voices rising in "Oh Happy Day," a song her mother used to sing. She felt her mother's presence, her strength, in every note. "I'm not done fighting," Kiara said, her voice steady. "Not for me, not for us." Maya nodded, her eyes gleaming. "You're just getting started, sister." Kiara's gaze lingered on the murals, on the faces of women who'd endured and thrived. She wasn't just Kiara Robinson, attorney. She was a daughter of Harlem, a beacon for those who'd been dimmed. The pain of Daniel's betrayal would fade, but her fire would burn forever. She turned to Maya, a smile breaking through. "Let's make some noise," she said, her heart alight with possibility. "Thank you for joining Kiara Robinson's unforgettable journey of reclaiming her light in the face of betrayal. Her fire, forged in Harlem's heart, left a mark. Did it ignite something in you? What moved you most? Kiara's unyielding strength, Daniel's regret, or Chloe's unraveling? Share your thoughts. Your voice adds to this story's echo. Gratitude for walking these Manhattan streets with us. Until the next tale calls, keep shining.